A very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on UBC TV yet again. My name is Sophia Matovu and you're watching UHealth Chat, proudly sponsored by National Medical Stores. Now today the show is a little bit different. You're used to us discussing medical conditions, management, and the rest that continues. But today we have none other than one of the representatives from the sponsors themselves, and we are going to talk about something a little bit different. We need for you to appreciate who our sponsor is. Now, on 3rd of this month, the president commissioned, a state-of-art warehouse, and that was in Kajansi, and this is for the National Medical Stores. Now, I'm made to understand it's among, I think, one of the biggest in the whole of Africa. And of course, with big things come better delivery of services and a lot more. Now, with me in studio to share with us on a wonderful topic, that is the journey of National Medical Stores, is none other than the chief. He's the Chief Stores and Operation Officer, and that is Paul Okware. Very welcome to the show.
Good evening. Sophie, thank you for having me here.
Okay. Now, Paul, I never take it for granted because there's a lot of confusion when it comes to telling the difference between joint medical stores, national medical stores. Some people can't tell apart who is who. Please tell us a little bit and a bit of a history about National Medical Stores to start the show.
All right. Good evening to everyone and those who are watching out there. Now, National Medical Stores is a government entity established by an Act of Parliament in 1993, mandated to procure, store and distribute essential medicines. And this we do primarily to public health facilities. We are just 29 years old now, and we are quite younger than joint medical stores. Joint medical stores is I'd say almost about 10 years older. And we're in the same space, which is health system supply chain. But they support and provide essential medicines to mainly faith-based facilities. So they are owned by the medical bureaus, either Catholic, Muslim, Protestant. And that entity exists to support those health facilities that they care for. And NMS was set up in the same spirit, but this time to care and provide for the public health facilities. At the time, the major distribution of commodities throughout the country was going through the faith-based system, which was joint medical stores. But with time, as systems developed and government got better and stronger, and National Medical Stores has grown even to serve nearly 3,000 facilities now.
Wow. Yeah. When you talk about the 3,000 facilities, what level, because up to the health center force, you might need to clarify on that.
So when we speak about health facilities at different levels, we serve starting from health center 2s. So the lower level facilities, we generally tend to understand them as the health center 2s, 3s and 4s. These are the most in number. They're quite numerous. Once you leave that level and start going up, we have what we call the hospitals. They used to be called district hospitals before we started cutting the districts up into a little bit smaller portions. And we have about 62 of those. And then we have regional referral hospitals across the country, which are about 16 now. And then you have more of the specialized institutes like Uganda Heart Institute and others like that, that we also provide medicines for. But by and large, what National Medical Stores does, and its purpose, is to ensure that these public health facilities, which are financed with money from the government of Uganda, actually receive quality medicines on a regular basis. So it is our job to make sure that, one, we can support them in their advocacy for budget, and once that money comes, it is on the vote for National Medical Stores, and then we make sure that they receive their commodities in a timely manner as well. So we have a partnership with them. They are clients. We support them as much as we can. But right now we work in an environment where the funding for commodities has been centralized so that we can gain some efficiencies from economies of scale. And this is how we get to serve and get the opportunity also to do good for more than 3,000 facilities across the country.
3,000 facilities sounds like quite a huge number.
Yeah.
How many staff are you to be able to meet the demands and expectations of these facilities without fail?
One of our objectives is to be as efficient as we can. We try to use the best talent that we can get in the country. We try and use the most efficient systems we can, and technology and processes as well. And for a very long time, we were only about 200 staff serving the entire country. It was quite a task. Recently, we've seen an exponential increase in the volumes of medicines that we've been handling, and we've had to increase the numbers, as also you had mentioned, even with now the commissioning of a warehouse in Kajansi, we naturally have to follow suit. Right now we are still below 400, about 380 staff, still doing this job across the country, making sure that we can receive these commodities, warehouse them, manage them efficiently enough, and then try as much as possible to work with the health facilities to see that they get their medicines as and when they require them. We also have a lot of staff in the field. We have staff who deliver medicines from the center, go and to every individual health facility, make sure that these medicines are delivered by our staff. And we also have other staff in the field who basically work as a liaison between us and the health facilities. We call this the client services staff. They basically represent us to the clients to try and consolidate their needs and asks. If there are any things peculiar about particular areas or health facilities, it's important for them to understand them and relay those back to the head office. We rely very much on information. We are
from the field.
Yes. We are customer focused, customer driven. We see our success as when our client can actually get what they want. So the efficiency with which we can get back information from them and the clarity with which that information comes back is very important for us. We see that as the starting point for the exercises that we do thereafter. Yeah.
How are you able to meet their demands without defaulting? Because there are times, let's just use the period of COVID-19. Of course, you have the exception where you were like among the essential workers and you could still move. But how? I'm looking at it and I'm trying to figure it out.
It is quite a very difficult task. Sometimes people just believe that it is just taking medicine, but it is more than that. All the staff that we are speaking about live just like you and I. When lockdown is there, it affects them. They find it difficult to get to work. So we had to find innovative ways of making sure that we could get some of the staff to come and live a little bit closer. But also, we say this appreciating that it would not be easy to get the entire group available at work. So we had to find very innovative ways. One of making sure we could receive, warehouse and distribute additional supplies for the COVID pandemic, which was also another task. It really required us to make sure that we established very, very quickly a surge operation unit, which was basically set up to deal with additional volumes of commodities that we were handling, so that we could, to the extent possible, make sure that we do not interrupt the routine supply of medicines. And setting this up parallel with different systems, with different staff, within those constraints of the lockdown, was quite difficult for us. But in the years that we went through COVID, we still were able to do the 6 cycles of distribution of medicines to the health facilities. Not very easy for us to do, but we found a way of making sure that we still made sure supplies were provided. And I think it's good and it's nice for this country. I think we've also received recognition from many fraternities stating that Uganda actually was able to put up a very good response to COVID-19. And this in part was because we had a very robust and resilient health supply chain system. These systems are the things that we keep talking about, putting in place and singing about, that they actually make a difference at the end of the day in making our lives as we know it as normal as possible. Yeah.
Now in Entebbe, where you're best, before we get to the new facility, what's the storage capacity like? Because I can imagine you had to even stock a lot more during the period of COVID of the normal way you had been stocking the drugs and supplies.
Yeah, for those who don't know where NMS is in Entebbe, we're right in the middle of town. Yeah, we are on Insamizi Road, just plot 4. If you get to what we call Kampala Road, which is that very old road in Entebbe, not very far from the Umeme office, you will find that NMS is just around the corner. But you can also see from the location that we have in Entebbe that the aspirations and the vision for what NMS could potentially be was a bit limited at the time. The plot we occupy is quite small. It's large by normal standards, but for the operation that we have, it's quite small. And we've tried to make sure that we utilize every single centimeter of that property there. So that site on its own would give us about 8,000 pallet locations worth of space. Now, when we're talking about pallet locations in terms of space, the vast majority of the essential medicines that we handle come stacked on Euro Type 1 pallets. These are normally wooden pallets that you may have seen. Some carpenters are becoming very creative in what they can do with pallets. Yeah, and I don't think anyone handles more pallets than us in a day. So we use those pallets. They measure about 1.2 meters by 0.8 of a meter, about 1.5 meters high. That space is closely equivalent to about a cubic meter, but not exactly. So that is what a pallet is. So we have space there that can easily accommodate about 8,000 of those. But that is a very small number compared to the volume of the stock that we are handling. So over the years, we've been forced to try and get space from outside our premises, either by renting or working with partners and things like that. And it's gone on for years. Sometimes you get extra volumes and you anticipate that this may be just a spike, and maybe you anticipate it will reduce the year after, but it doesn't. And we have also, over the years, gained the confidence of government. Every year for the past, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years, we have had a gradual increase in the amount of funding government has provided for medicines. We have quite a sizable budget now, and we expect that this shall continue in the coming years as well. So we felt it very prudent at the time that we start thinking about the future, and not just the near-term future where you're thinking maybe of 5 years, but even to be able to have a robust system that can actually last for generations to come. And that's where we started thinking, oh, I think we need to think of something a little bit bigger, better, where we can work with even more efficiency. And that's how we started thinking, I think it's time for us to thinking of another place outside here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of like your distribution of drugs, are there any category of specific drugs that you realize, or medicines, that when you go to the facilities to deliver, this is what's more on demand? I'll just give an example. It's the paracetamols. Is it what kind of drugs, the malaria drugs that seem to be moving at a fast rate vis-a-vis some of the others?
Health system supply chains are very complex. Our catalog of medicines is in excess of 3,000 individual SKUs. Those are the individual stock keeping units. We have that wide a range of commodities that we can offer to our clients. Now, again, I try to stress earlier that our business is customer focused and oriented. We're trying to see that the operations that we're trying to have at NMS are geared towards providing what the client wants.
Exactly.
And depending on the prevailing mobility in the country, you will start to see certain shifts towards certain drugs from time to time. But I think where we are noticing shifts, I think with our population starting to age, and I think also life expectancy starting to improve, you start to see increasing demand for medication for chronic diseases. I think that is something that is starting to increase gradually, but not spiking, but you can see a trend towards that side there. That's why in all our messaging and where we sponsor, we try and advocate for preventive health, just to make sure that people know that their health is also partly contributed by them and their behavior and attitude towards health issues, so that we can impart some sort of responsible living as well. But also there are diseases which are endemic to this country, which from time to time we do see spikes in. The usual ones like malaria tend to flare up from time to time, and we try as much as possible to make sure that we hold sufficient buffers for those diseases where we know it is only a matter of time before we see more cases coming up. I think even just before we got on air, we were hearing messages from the Honorable Minister about Ebola and things like that. That's another area where we're also very focused in making sure that as a country, we can put together a very meaningful response. So we also have stockpiles of medicines that we can use in public health emergencies in the eventuality of an outbreak of this nature. And even before the outbreak came, we had been distributing a lot of supplies to health facilities, almost as pre-positioning, just to make sure that in case something happens, health workers can protect themselves and we can find at least an easy footing when it comes to mounting a response to an outbreak like this.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you ever found yourself in a scenario where you've run out of particular drugs and can't possibly be able to get them again, in terms of like, you've procured, but that is it?
Yeah, it does happen. We work with resources that are not infinite, they are finite. We are supported largely by government, which does give us a budget, and which we expend, and we cannot cross the limit that they give us. We work also a lot with partners who support us, and also they have limits. So in some instances, you may find where you may be in a position where some commodities may not be available, but by and large, the instances where we've not been able to quickly get commodities that we want is where we have global shortages. I think a very prime example is when we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic and the country had been able to get resources to actually buy the vaccine but there was no vaccine available on the market. So sometimes you may have your money, but you don't have access to the drug. And that is why when we take a strategic decision to make sure that now we need a bigger warehouse, we want to hold enough buffers so that even when the supply side of the supply chain cannot provide as much as the country needs, we have sufficient quantities in stock. And that's how we can develop what we call commodity security, to make sure that as a strategic decision, we are being deliberate in making sure that any eventuality where the supply can be interrupted, we have a facility that can hold sufficient quantities for us. Because many times it's not enough to have the money. Access to the commodity sometimes is a bit difficult, especially when the disease that you're dealing with is affecting several countries and you have to compete. We still have a quite small manufacturing base in the country, though we're trying to promote them as much as possible. So naturally you will find that in countries where they actually manufacture those things, they will prioritize their people. Yeah, and then you will find that in Uganda we may come second after them. So again, as strategy, we need to make sure we understand the terrain, identify those commodities which are coming from the outside where it is possible that we can have an upstream interruption in supply, and make sure that we can now build a warehouse that can hold sufficient buffers as a means of ensuring that we have security in health.
Then have you found yourself at any one point in a scenario where you have drugs that get to a point where they're still under your control and expire?
Expiries are something that are quite common in a business where you're dealing with perishables. All medicines do expire eventually. It is like food. So the science that we have to apply in the field that we're in is how can we make sure that we can reduce to the extent possible that rate of expiry. How can we be wise and prudent to make sure that whereas we're expending money to get these commodities and have them ready in the eventuality that people order for them, we also minimize and hedge against that risk, which is a very real risk, that eventually these commodities can actually expire and we may actually lose money. So we are very, very deliberate in the way we do this. From the data that we keep looking at in a business like ours, which is basically commodity-based for healthcare products, you find health products. You find that the expiry rates tend to be about 5% of the total throughput. So if you have a supply chain that is putting through about 100 million, the expectation is that about 5% of that will go to waste. It's even higher with food, because food has a lower shelf life. The medicines that we handle may range up to 5 years, but some even a little bit lower, maybe even 3 years. So we have to see how we manage that. So with NMS, we've set ourselves a target of 2%. We say 2% is the maximum allowable expiry rate we can allow. But we've always been able to achieve less than 0.5%. So if you were to compare our efficiency in managing the stock and mitigating the risk of expiry, you will find that when you compare with our compatriots in other warehouses of similar nature, we have actually done a very good job. We quite often are being asked to explain how we actually work behind the scenes to make sure that we can always keep that risk closer to zero.
Okay, before we get to look at the warehouse, the new warehouse that we're talking about, certain times some people might think this is a role of National Drug Authority. But there are stories that have come out on several occasions where they say that the public health facilities sometimes, sneak out the drugs and sell them to different, maybe small pharmacies or private clinics. What are you doing to be able to support and ensure that this vice doesn't happen?
Sophie, it is a very disappointing topic to always talk about, because I work with a very committed group in Entebbe, and I know what goes into providing every single dose of medicine that is provided to a health facility. To then hear that somebody took advantage either of a weak system somewhere along the line and took that item for their own gain, I think is very, very disappointing. We've had reports that it does happen, and I think it is almost an open secret now that is something that has been happening. And we need other people also to help us and join this fight and make sure that we can stop it. On our side, we've tried as much as possible to make sure that medicines which we procure using Government of Uganda financing is clearly labeled Government of Uganda, not for sale. It is very conspicuous and in red on the label. So if somebody sees it, someone should never pay for it. And I think that has helped deter and reduce on the amount of pilferage of these medicines in health facilities. And we've also been working very closely with CID. We support them in their investigations. We work closely with the Health Monitoring Unit of the State House. They also have a very keen interest in knowing that the commodities we're providing for these health facilities are not leaving the health facility for any reason other than treatment of the patient. And it's a struggle. I don't think we are there yet, but I think we need, the general public also to just make sure that they do their part in making sure they don't pay for anything which is clearly labeled Government of Uganda not for sale. And even I think to figure out people who actually they know to be perpetrators of this kind of criminal activity. It is undermining our health system. It undermines the effort of a very good group of people in Entebbe. We very much want to see commodities reach health facilities and get to patients who need it, and nobody should pay for that. It's already paid for with taxpayers' money. So there is no reason why somebody should take it for their own gain. It is very unacceptable.
Okay. At this particular point, because we've been talking about the new facility that you've had us talk about, I'd like us to take a look at the state-of-art warehouse of NMS in Kajansi. That was commissioned by the President, like I told you, on the 3rd. Let's take a tour into the facility.
Demanded by health facilities across the country, and it is against this background that Ministry of Health and the National Medical Stores sought to expand storage capacity at the central level to manage supply chain demands. Now in final stages of completion, the new warehouse project in Kajansi will improve the storage capacity with an additional 30,000 pallet locations of warehouse space, which is almost 3 times the current capacity at Entebbe National Medical Stores headquarters, and sufficient office space for more than 200 National Medical Stores staff.
The opportunity with the new Kajansi warehouse for National Medical Stores is that it is a much larger facility, giving us almost 4 times the capacity that we have been having at Entebbe. We are talking about at Entebbe having a capacity of 8,000, approximately 8,000 pallets. But as regards Kajansi, we have an opportunity for 30,000 pallets. And so that is a capacity of approximately 4 times as much. And that opportunity gives us a chance to provide more space for our drugs. We can accommodate better buffer stocks. We can make sure that our programs, like especially malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, reproductive health and others, immunization, have better stocks, and we have better capacity to store this. We are also taking advantage of the fact that Kajansi has better IT facility. We have introduced a comprehensive IT facility to be able to track our drugs wherever they go.
When we started with all these innovations and we delivered it the last mile, we remained with the challenge of sharing this information with the stakeholders. It is only us who knew. I would know, and I know now, I can tell you that from morning or for the time you have been seated here, I can tell you where we have delivered. And I can give you the telephone number of the person who has received our supplies, and you can call him or her and confirm that they have received these medicines. I have it on IT through our own innovation here with our IT team. We have had tools. We have a tool now called the DMT, the Delivery Monitoring Tool. So it will alert people and tell them when we are dispatching a vehicle. So if it is going to Arua, or Mbale, or Hoima, it will give you a notification. The DHO, the RDC, the CAO, and we tell you we are coming. The truck which has your medicine has left NMS.
This warehouse today that we see was financed by the Global Fund and also co-financed by the government of Uganda to see to it that is completed. And I think this was a very good example of synergy, between government and then the development partners to see to it that something very good like this can come up.
The project delivery method used was design-build, where ideas from the different staffs were consolidated into user requirements and the concept developed, and then both the detailed design and construction functions were undertaken by one contractor. From this, the contractor delivered a green building with installation of energy-efficient solutions like the use of solar energy to run the building and natural light instead of artificial power-consuming bulbs. And a solar system of 300 kilowatts of energy has been installed, sufficient to cover 50% of the power demands of the building. Other key facilities which have been taken care of include 2,600 cubic meters of large volume cold room area comprising of 7 cold rooms and 2 freezers, an oxygen plant able to produce 100 cylinders per day. Other amenities for staff include creche and daycare center for kids below 2 years, gym for staff, and a first aid room. The scope of the contract also included supply of warehouse equipment, which included a racking system for 30,000 pallets on location, 4 forklifts, 4 very narrow aisle tracks, each less than 2 meters wide, and a conveyor belt and gravity roller system for fine picking area. Most of these installations have been consolidated into the building management system for easy monitoring of the building and other fitted gadgets like temperature, flood, and humidity monitors. A fully equipped data center was also provided, plus other ICT equipment including computers, laptops, and printers. With this, the facility will be one of the biggest in East Africa, if not the whole of Africa.
UHealth Chat is a show that covers a variety of health topics to help people take control of their health. It is proudly sponsored by National Medical Stores, who are mandated to procure, store, and distribute essential medicines and medical supplies to public health facilities in Uganda.
Okay, I believe you have seen it now. Many of, like when you're dying to see it, what's that state of art, a warehouse that NMS is talking about. You have seen it. Now tell us, because we have seen it. Tell me about the facility, because of course I can see it's humongous. I have seen the pallets. I have seen the size, is much bigger than what we have probably seen before. Please take us into the facility.
All right, Sophie. To start off, I think I'll share the philosophy behind that building and project. When we made a decision to have a new warehouse, we wanted it to be standard, and not just any standard, international standard, and better than any other that was in existence. Because this area of health supply chain is not something perhaps you will go to school and learn. You may learn procurement or supply chain, but the actual operations in the warehouse are very nuanced, and you find that they're very bespoke for the type of the client that you serve, the type of suppliers that you have, and the skill level of your staff and the technology you're deploying as well. So we made sure that we borrowed and got a chance to visit some of the best in the world in this area here, their philosophy behind the design of their warehouses, the philosophy behind how staff were made comfortable in the spaces that they would be working in, to make sure that work is not an onerous thing that we dread every day when we are going in the morning to work, but one that we can actually look forward to, knowing that we make a difference in people's lives with every minute that we spend at work. So first of all, we wanted to make sure it was comfortable for staff. So the first thing is, how can we still achieve the issues of space, which we've spoken about, but in an environment where the staff don't feel like they're the second priority item in that space there. So we had to build the office space and amenities for staff wrapped around that warehouse in a way that would make sure that people are walking shorter distances if they were going to use any facility, shorter distances if they were going to see their colleagues. The groups and departments that normally have linkages and need to be closer together and have discussions to do troubleshooting can actually be located closer to each other, so that we can work closer as a team. And that is something we're trying to promote in the building. How can we use this space here to promote teamwork and to make sure that we can work in an efficient way, which is not stressful? So you'll find a lot of amenities there, like a gym, the daycare. Many of the ladies were very excited about that. They can come and leave their children somewhere and work actually stress-free without having those disruptions. Some people want to have a gym. They want to go and work out. After work, that makes sure that they can beat traffic and actually stay. They can even give us a lot more at work. Lots of amenities there, nice open cafeteria. But also another thing that we wanted to achieve is to make sure that we had a green building, so that our environmental footprint, or carbon footprint as you call it, was minimal as possible. So in that you will find a lot of use of natural light. Almost all the spaces there are utilizing cross ventilation to make sure that we can get air inside there. None of the offices directly has an AC. We're trying to make sure that we can use the passive cooling in the building. We've used a lot of insulation in the building as well. There's a lot of fiberglass insulation in those panels that you see there, meaning that even when you walk into that building, and we expect it to be between 18 to 22 degrees at any one time, we can still achieve that many times of the month in the year by using passive means, meaning you're not actively cooling the thing with a machine, which is quite a feat. We also have a solar plant on top of the building just to top it off, able to produce about 300 kVA worth of power, which is going to be half of our peak need in that facility if everything is running. So you can see we've tried to think of any possibility that may emerge. We even have, as part of that project there, an oxygen plant, which is going to be able to produce for us about 100 cylinders of oxygen every day. And we plan also to expand that capacity with a cryogenic plant that can actually do about 5,000 cylinders within a day. We've also made sure that we have a vehicle garage in there. I think you've seen our fleet as well on the road. We traverse the country every single day and wanted to have an in-house garage where we can take care of our vehicles, have a faster turnaround time, again, which adds to our efficiency and perhaps even bring down the cost. And we're also supporting the vaccine program, especially when it comes to cold chain maintenance. We recently were asked by the Ministry of Health to oversee the maintenance of cold chain equipment across the entire country, which is quite a feat. We have more than about 6,900 facilities that have fridges that hold vaccines that come from NMS, and we are responsible for making sure that they're always functional. So we even have a central vaccine workshop where we can actually do repairs and quarterback the entire exercise of making sure that equipment is running. That is all inside there. We have redundancy built in there. We've got batteries, UPSs. We've got a fantastic large volume cold room in that space there. This is about 2,700 cubic meters, which is considerable more than we have in Entebbe. The space we have in Entebbe gives us about 800 cubic meters of cold storage space, 2 to 8 for the vaccines that we distribute. We plan to have an additional 2,700 cubic meters, which is quite an increase in the amount of space we shall have. So there's a lot of exciting capacity. Everything that we put our minds on in terms of increasing capacity, wanted to make sure it was world standard and the best that we could do, but not only look to the short or medium term future, but make sure that we're building a warehouse that is scalable for the generations to come. So again, I think I'll invite you again after this. Maybe you take interest in walking around and we'll explain every single bit of the design and the thought process behind it. And you'll actually see from the building a lot of passion and deliberateness in what people are trying to achieve in terms of the workspace, but also to make sure that we can work well enough to serve the population.
Then you've talked about the design and everything. Now, should I call it the promised land? When is the team moving from Entebbe to the new home or to the promised land?
We plan to have people getting in there 1st January. But it's not just as easy as that. We have a lot of stock that we still hold in Entebbe, and it is not very easy to transfer all that stock in one go. So it is going to have to be a gradual process. So we've already started receiving supplies in our warehouse in Kajansi. We were able, at least even on the first day, to offload more than 20 40-foot containers in a day, which is quite significant. Just to provide perspective in terms of the capacity to turn over inventory of medicines here. In our facility in Entebbe, ordinarily we can handle maybe between 5 and 8 containers a day of medicines coming in, and conversely that converts into what we can actually push out. But already we were able to handle 20 in one day. So that just speaks volumes of the extra capacity we have built into that facility. Meaning that in the event that we have multiple needs from across the country, we have more than twice the capacity to respond in terms of time, in terms of the volume. So you find that there is agility built into the design of the entire project. So we also have technology that has to now power this entire engine. That whole building requires a very, very good system to run it. And we also have that in the works. We've already implemented a new ERP in Entebbe. So that also now we have to get working in Kajansi to make sure that now we can extrapolate the gains that we have made in terms of technology and the processes and make sure that those can work in Kajansi as well.
Then a bit of the technology, when it comes to the staff and what they need to apply, have you also, I believe you have upgraded it.
Oh yes, we have. There is no way we are going to pour new wine in old wine skin or conversely pour old wine in new wine skin. I think the new building demands and asks that we have a new state-of-the-art management information system, and we have just deployed NMS Plus. Which I think we've spoken about so many times in different fora. We basically are digitalizing the entire health system supply chain, right from the suppliers down to the health facilities. We want to make sure that process is paperless, because we have a huge number of stakeholders who are interested, and there are always requests. We're always inundated with requests for information. So by digitalizing that system there, we believe everybody now shall have a clear understanding of what NMS is doing, but what are the other players in the supply chain are also doing. So when you even ask the other question about what are we doing to make sure that we can minimize pilferage, digitalizing the system is one of them. Because now it will be possible for you to go to a facility and demand to know how much of a particular drug was delivered and how many doses were issued. So there is an element in information that makes and empowers people to make sure that they can start demanding for better service. And these are the things that we want to see. So the project may be a building, but I think the potential it presents for the near and medium term future are quite significant for us. We see this as only the start of something more. We believe the people there have the potential to build a very resilient and robust health supply chain system.
I believe you have a success story besides just this big achievement that we are seeing now. Would you like to tell us or take us into that story as NMS? I'm sure you've registered a lot of success.
A success story, I think that would be an understatement. I think NMS is built on success. I think we're always striving to make sure that we do and outdo ourselves. I think everything we have endeavored and set out to do, I think we have not failed. I think our most recent achievement, I think, will be that warehouse that people have seen. 30,000 pallet locations for a government-owned facility is quite an investment in a country like this. To be able to do it and do it within budget and make sure you can be delivered with equipment and technology as well is quite remarkable. All the other features I've been talking to you about, all were part of the project, and we were able to embed all those in a warehouse and deliver it green is quite a remarkable achievement for us, and it's something we're very proud about. I have just mentioned that we've already deployed a new Oracle ERP. That is also something that is quite significant. Sometimes people think that these systems like ERPs are very simple, like going to buy software and installing it. It is not that easy. Yeah, I think when you look at the data, you realize that about 66% of ERP implementations actually fail because processes are not well articulated. You find maybe the staff lack the skills, competence to use it well, or the systems and processes have not yet reached a stage of maturity where they can use best practice ERPs. But we found that we were able to do that and have it implemented, and it's now working for us pretty well. So it's something we're very proud about. Huge project. An ERP project of in excess of $10 million is quite something significant. And we believe this shall provide a digital backbone for the health supply chain system for the country for many years to come. We've done many other significant things in the areas of vaccination. I think we are now one of the leaders on the continent in terms of making sure there is availability at the center, at the health facilities, and conversely coverage across the country. The access to vaccines has dramatically improved ever since NMS took over that mantle of making sure that we can actually procure and distribute these vaccines across the country. We receive people from across the world these days to come and learn from us how this is being done. Those are things that I would not take for granted every day. We've made strides in our models of distribution as well. We have last mile delivery, which is something which is being adopted by very many countries across the world right now. We are the first ones to do it, to be able to distribute medicines from districts down to individual health facilities and make sure that we do it and have our staff individually actually deliver those medicines to those individual health facilities. Quite a task for us. At the beginning, when we even suggested that we would do it, everybody thought that this was close to craziness.
Close to being crazy.
But there's nothing we like a challenge and someone doubting us. I think we, as usual, rolled up our sleeves and made sure we made it work. And right now, it is basically the benchmark for other countries in the region. Everybody wants to know how we do it. And we also try and stay a step ahead. So when they come and learn from us, by the time they come back, we've added a little more to it. And we keep on like that. And we try and keep the success rolling. It keeps us interested, keeps the young people young and eager to work. And I think the management and board have done a very good job in making sure that they have a team that is very interested in making sure that they can deliver on projects that can actually make a very big difference in this country.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Now, other people who are doing the same kind of business like you look at you like a competition.
Okay.
It is true.
Okay.
They look at you like a competition. Do you have any plan to see that you can maybe advise or train some of them to also be able, since we're all doing the same thing, to up their game?
Yeah,
possibly not to your standard,
yeah,
I would say, but at least somewhere, because if you're sharing this knowledge with other countries outside Uganda and they've been able to learn a thing from you or two, how do we support the others?
Yeah, in Uganda we are a government entity, so the clientele we serve, I think would say, is a bit of a niche. They may not directly compete with us to serve them because the money is in a vote, but they are in the same space, which is health system supply chain. So the metrics we use for measuring the efficiency of our operation and theirs are quite similar. So I think that's where the competitiveness comes in, when we try and ask what are your KPIs on this, and you find sometimes we may be better, sometimes they may be getting close, so sometimes you get better. You get very interested. So yes, there is an edge of competitiveness because people commit a lot of their time, more than the standard working hours, to make sure that operation runs very well. Even as we are speaking here, we have a night shift working in Entebbe. So when people commit that amount of time and here someone may be close to or even better, I think it raises a lot of ears. But I think on our side, we believe that we really complement each other a lot better. Many of the innovations that we've been able to implement, ideas have come from very many different places. Some of them are ideas which failed in other supply chains, but we believe we have the environment and the skill set to make sure they work in our space. And we've been able to share many of our ideas with others. So we, as a corporation, intend to make sure that we can provide and give back in terms of training in supply chain management. So even part of that Kajansi project, I did mention it, is also, I don't want to call it a training institute, but we want to offer courses to people who are interested in learning a thing or two about supply chain, especially in health systems. So some of the things that we have learned, I think we believe that we should share with those around us. We believe it would only embolden those who believe they want to have a career in this sort of space. It will only make sure that people are more particular in the way they manage perhaps their stocks in the health facilities, or even more aware of how they can supervise, for example, the leaderships in the districts and the local government. How can they be more aware about the services that are coming through national medical stores on behalf of government, and how can they monitor them to make sure that they're not being pilfered, they're going to the right people, they're being properly quantified, and the services are actually making a difference on the ground. Those are the sort of things we want to interest people in. And the plans are underway. We'll make sure that perhaps next time you visit, you can also take up a course in health system supply chain.
Thank you.
Great.
Then what are some of the challenges you face in delivering on your mandate as national medical stores?
To be able to deliver the commodities that we deliver, which are basically essential medicines, you have to be able to buy them. Yeah, so that is an area where nobody has a blank check. So if there was obviously more financing, I think it would make things easier. But again, the constraints on the availability of funds only force us now to work with the health facilities to see how we can cut our caught according to the cloth that we have. So that is an area which can always be improved. But as we had shared, government is very committed to making sure that they can continuously improve the amount of financing they're providing to NMS and Avert 116, and to make sure that we can continue to provide for the population of the country. It is an issue that I think is common across the world. There is no health system in the world that is not grappling with the costs of providing healthcare. Healthcare is quite an expensive business, and the more you succeed, the more it becomes expensive, because people live longer and then you have to take care of them. And generally we can see our population is growing every day. So that is something that we work out with the government. We appreciate the support we get from partners from time to time, who also provide in kind commodities to make sure that we can provide a healthcare system that can actually be fit for purpose for the people in this country. But there are other things as well. I tell you that we go to every individual health facility directly or through our agents. We need to reach there. Reaching there means you need to reach there on the road. Some of the facilities are on the islands. Some of them are actually up in mountains where roads were washed away almost 10 years ago. So sometimes we go with our staff, carrying medicine. So, but we've got to make sure that the medicines get there, because if the health facility is there and the patient can't get there, we can't have an excuse for not getting there. So we try as much as possible to brave some of these conditions and make sure that we can access them. We also are implementing NMS Plus. It's a digitalized platform for the health supply chain in the country, and this requires internet, it requires computers, requires people to have a skill set, at least some working knowledge of how a computer works. So these are things that we accept as challenges. Not to complain, but just to make sure we put on our to-do list and then see if we can come up with solutions to address them. It is something that we have to do, I think, in this exercise of nation building.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my final question to you is, where do you see NMS in the next 5 years?
NMS in the next 5 years? I think nothing short of a center of excellence. I think we have put in a lot of that hard work. I think we continue to energize the cooperation with youth, people with fresh ideas committed to work, and we still have the confidence of the board and management to make sure that we can innovate. We can try things without fear of them not working out the first time, with the opportunity to try again and make them succeed, as long as we can stay committed. So I believe, at least in the region and in the continent, we will always stand out as a center of excellence. One people shall look up to, come and check with, to see exactly how a small group of people in a country like Uganda can put together a resilient and robust health supply chain system.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much. And I believe it will be open where, you know, there are times kids have school tours.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe
Yeah.
they'll get an opportunity to be able to learn a thing or two from joining or coming to visit and tour the warehouse,
Yep.
including us, the adults.
Yes.
We look forward to getting this tour.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for supporting and sponsoring the show, because you're making it very possible for us to be able to preach the messages of prevention, management of the condition, living positively with whatever condition it is, and of course taking their medicines regularly. Well, Paul has really been a wonderful guest tonight, and I'm sure you've been able to learn a thing or two about who National Medical Stores is. That is all we had time for tonight, and right now it's just about 6 minutes to the top of the hour. I'd like to leave this space and say good night to you from me and Paul, and keep watching UBC for the 10 o'clock news. Will be coming your way shortly with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome to the Living Room Stadium. It's the FIFA World Cup. The match is about to start. Food and drink ready. There's no space left for anyone. Come on, get your lucky chair. Take your usual spot. Even the puppy has one. It's preparation time.